On February 25th, 1836, while Mexican cannonballs pounded the walls of the Alamo, Connecticut inventor Samuel Colt patented a new kind of pistol, one the defenders of that crumbling fort would have found valuable on March 6th. It featured a revolving cylinder with 5 chambers aligned with a single stationary barrel. Colt produced a .28 caliber model, but followed up with an improved .36 caliber variant the next year. The original design contained no loading lever. As a result, the owner had to break it into 3 parts every time he needed to reload, a cumbersome disadvantage in a firefight. The weapon also featured a folding trigger that dropped down when one cocked the hammer. Because he had his factory in Paterson, New Jersey, Colt christened his invention the Paterson revolver. Although it attracted little notice at the time of its introduction, in the hands of the Texas Rangers, this tiny pistol was destined to revolutionize warfare on the southern plains. The Pattersons' journey to Texas was slow and circuitous. In 1839, Svante M. Swenson, a Swedish trader, brought a dozen he had acquired from Colt's agent in New York. Later that year, John Fuller, a mutual friend of Colt's and the newly elected Mirabeau B. Lamar, visited the Republic. He demonstrated the 5-shooter for the poet president, who became enamored of it. He sent 2 of Fuller's Pattersons to Captain John Coffee Hayes, commander of the San Antonio Ranger Company. Captain Jack, as his men called him, immediately recognized the value and potential of the weapon. With such a firearm, his Rangers could stay in the saddle and take the fight to the Comanches. The revolving cylinder boosted the Texians' rate of fire. For the first time, they could unleash lead bullets as rapidly as the Numana fired their arrows. Captivated by Fuller's pitch, Lamar placed an order for 180 of the .36 caliber number 5 holster model, which acquired the tag Texas Patterson. But then, in one of his biggest blunders, he assigned the entire allotment to the Texas Navy. No doubt Commodore Edwin Moore was pleased to receive them, but during their shipboard service, records do not indicate that the pistols ever left their holsters. Meanwhile, the only revolvers available to Hayes and his Rangers were those obtained through private purchase. Officials also equipped a few units of the regular Army with Pattersons, but most of them were destroyed by their owners or captured by the Mexicans during the Santa Fe expedition. In December 1841, Sam Houston regained the presidency and mothballed the Navy. Finally, he could transfer the Colt pistols from sailors who did not need them to Rangers who did, desperately. On New Year's Day, the president convened with Captain Hayes and allocated 227 of the Texas Pattersons to his Rangers. At last, Captain Jack had the weapon he needed to succeed in the ongoing frontier campaigns. But it was not enough to merely acquire the pistols. Hayes made sure his Rangers knew how to use them. One of them, James Wilson Nichols, left a vivid description of the captain's training regimen.
We kept out scouts all the time. When one would come in, another would go out, and those not on scout were every day practicing horsemanship and marksmanship. We put up a post about the size of a common man, then put another about 40 yards farther on. We would run our horses full speed and discharge our rifles at the first post, draw our pistols, and fire at the second. At first there was some wild shooting, but we had not practiced in 2 months, until there was not many men that would not put his balls in the center of the post.
All that grueling training was about to pay dividends. On June 8, 1844, Captain Hayes, Lieutenant Ben McCullough, and 13 Rangers were on a scout searching for a Comanche raiding party led by the famed war chief Yellow Wolf, who had only just recently terrorized the region around San Antonio. Hayes yearned to engage the marauders. Each of his Rangers now carried a brace of Texas Pattersons, and he was eager to test his tactics in combat. They rode the Pinta Trail until it crossed the Guadalupe River in present-day Kendall County. There, along the banks of Walker's Creek, Hayes called a halt. While his men rested, the captain posted Ranger Noah Cherry in the top of a tall tree to scan the surrounding countryside. They were deep in enemy territory, and Captain Jack wished to make sure Yellow Wolf did not take him unawares. Suddenly, Cherry bellowed.
"Jerusalem, Captain! Yonder comes 1,000 Indians."
The startled Cherry exaggerated just a tad. Yellow Wolf had nowhere near 1,000 warriors. Best estimates placed the number at around 70. But in a time like that, no one took time to stop and count the number of enemies bearing down on them. What the Rangers knew for a dead certainty was that they had located the raiding party, and it greatly outnumbered them. In such circumstances, most commanders would have ordered a hasty retreat, but Captain Hayes instructed his men to saddle up and follow him toward the approaching tribesmen. Yellow Wolf, a wily tactician, tried to lure the Rangers into a trap, but Hayes refused to fall for it. Finally, the chief led his entire war party forward in a ragged battle line. Ever since Plum Creek, Comanches had avoided pitched battle with Texians, relying instead on their time-honored strike and run tactics. But observing how few Rangers he faced, Yellow Wolf was eager to mix it up. This was the moment Hayes had prayed for. Drawing one of his revolvers, he led his Rangers in a countercharge right into the mass of the onrushing Indians. As they closed with the enemy, the captain roared, "Crowd them! Powder burn them!" This was not hyperbole. He knew the 36 caliber Patterson possessed precious little punching power. To kill, a man had to close to point blank range. That was not a problem. Enemies were everywhere and too close for comfort. The Rangers remembered their training. They marked their man, fired, and brought him down. But then, to the amazement of their Indian adversaries, they fired again, and again, and again, and again. Then they drew their second Patterson and kept shooting. The braves scattered, but the Rangers remained in the saddle and pursued them for almost an hour. The Comanches suffered between 20 and 50 killed. Among the slain was Yellow Wolf himself. Hayes lost one man killed and 4 more seriously wounded. The firefight on Walker's Creek marked a strategic pivot point in the history of Indian warfare. Before it, Texians had been unable to equal Comanches on horseback. Afterwards, it was the Numana who fought at disadvantage. The combination of Texas guts and American technology proved unbeatable. Samuel Colt gave Hayes and his Rangers the weapon that they carried into legend. And although Comanches raided the Texas frontier for another 3 decades, the introduction of the Patterson 5-shooter marked the beginning of their inevitable demise. One Comanche warrior who survived the Battle of Walker's Creek knew that he had witnessed a game changer. He swore that he would never fight Hayes again because, he declared, Devil Jack had a shot for every finger on the hand.